Today's lesson is as inaccurate as an English speaker. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike.
Hello, I'm Kiki.
And we are going to be looking today at a few interesting idioms that we use in English. They're all related to animals. I would bet good money that most of you have heard of these idioms. And so we're going to be talking about what they mean, how we use them in English. And of course, it's totally fine to use them in English, especially once you learn that the science behind the idioms is usually really, really wrong. As I said, it's okay to use them as idioms even if they don't actually make a lot of sense in the natural world. A scientist might say, well, actually, those animals don't really do that. That doesn't matter. We still use these idioms, but it is kind of interesting to know that the fact and the reality of the true animal is very different from the common knowledge or common wisdom that we use when we use the idioms.
Okay, so in our title today, as inaccurate as an English speaker, the word inaccurate basically just means something that is not accurate, it's not correct, it's not exact or precise. Okay, so it might not be the truth of something. And we will find out more about that throughout our article today.
Absolutely. So let's check out the first part of the article in as inaccurate as an English speaker. As inaccurate as an English speaker. English has numerous interesting idioms related to animals. It makes sense because animals are all around us, and these phrases can add color to our communications. However, some of them are based on false premises. For example, while the expression like a moth to a flame assumes that moths are attracted to bright lights, a recent study found that they're actually just confused by them. Let's take a look at some other commonly heard animal-related sayings that aren't supported by the facts.
"大家好，我们先来介绍标题中的形容词 inaccurate， 它的意思是不准确的或是不精准的。例如 The news report stating that the fire killed 3 people is inaccurate。 这则称火灾烧死3人的新闻报道是不正确的。或者 The weather report has been inaccurate lately。 最近气象报告一直都不准确。再来看到名词 idiom， 表示惯用语或是成语。例如 To sound like a native speaker, you should use more idioms。 想要说话听起来像母语人士，你应该要用更多惯用语。或是 Do you know any other idioms that have a similar meaning to this one？ 你知道其他与这个有类似含义的成语吗？接着是名词 communication， 它的意思是沟通或是交流。例如 To be a leader, you need to have good communication skills。 要当领导者，你需要有良好的沟通技巧。或者 Open and honest communication is the key to a steady relationship。 开放和诚实的沟通是稳定关系的关键。再来介绍名词 premise， 表示前提或是作为先决条件的假设。我们可以说 The premise of the movie is quite intriguing。 这部电影的前提相当吸引人。
Okay, we are back. So, how can we be as inaccurate as an English speaker, especially when using idioms? As it says in the first sentence, English has numerous interesting idioms related to animals. Yeah, so we're talking about animal idioms here because that is one of the idioms that is most commonly used in English. What are idioms? These are expressions whose meaning is not really predictable from the usual meanings of the different elements. One that you might know is when we say someone kicks the bucket. Now, when you think of someone kicking a bucket, you think they just didn't look where they were walking and their foot hit the bucket and the bucket went skittering across the floor. But actually, the idiom in English to kick the bucket has nothing to do with kicking the bucket. It means to die. So we use that expression. If someone kicks the bucket when they're 92 years old, that means they died when they're 92. So these idioms are interesting because anyone who uses them expects expects the other person to also understand them, and the meaning is shared among everyone. But for an outsider, especially for someone learning the language, they often don't make a lot of sense, the idioms. Now, when we add in the fact that many of the idioms themselves, especially the ones about animals, don't make a lot of sense, it can be confusing, but it definitely makes English more interesting.
Right. It makes sense because animals are all around us. So a lot of people are able to relate to animals. So that's why a lot of idioms have to do with animals. And these phrases can add color to our communications. So when you're adding color to something, you're basically trying to make something more interesting. So instead of a black and white picture, you add color to something to make it a beautiful picture. Just like when we're talking, you want to add color to it by having more interesting vocabulary or being more eloquent by using different ways to describe things. So in this case, we are adding color to our communication skills by using more idioms. Now, what is communications? Basically, they are the different methods and ways we exchange information. So communication could be us, Mike, you and I sitting here talking to each other.
Yes, indeed.
And that's exchanging words and information. But you can also be communicating with your computer. You use numbers, binary numbers, to talk to your computer, to ask your computer to do something. So there's lots of different ways to communicate, or these are different ways of communication. However, some of them are based on false premises.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, so some of them are kind of inaccurate. If something is based on a false premise, it won't really be accurate. A premise is sort of an accepted idea, all right? When I put forward a premise, it's kind of like a theory. It's something that I might have people agree or disagree on. But once we agree on something, we are all kind of agreeing on the basic ground rules, the basic facts, things like that. So often, when we grow up, we learn certain things about parts of the world, and we kind of assume that those are true. But then you might find out later, or science might discover new things later on in your life that sort of challenges those premises, that challenges those basic assumptions, those basic ground rules. So, like, for example, we have here, while the expression like a moth to a flame assumes that moths are attracted to bright lights, a recent study found that they're actually just confused by them. I think most people would think, moths fly around lights and they fly around a candle flame because moths are attracted to light. I always kind of wondered about this because you never see moths trying to fly towards the sun,
That's
right?
true.
They're always flying towards lights at night,
Right.
but in the daytime they don't seem confused. But that is something a lot of people would just sort of accept as being a fact. Moths are attracted to flames or lights, and that's why we use the expression like a moth to a flame to talk about a strong attraction. When the kids came home, they ran to the PlayStation like moths to a flame, or the kids at the birthday party ran to the table filled with cake and soft drinks like moths to a flame. They're strongly attracted like that. It was a natural inclination to do it, but it turns out that moths aren't actually attracted to flames. They're just confused by them. So that kind of is a false premise that the idiom is based on.
Let's take a look at some other commonly heard animal-related sayings that aren't supported by the facts. Okay, so today we're talking about these inaccurate idioms. When we say like a moth to a flame, thinking that they're really excited about it, they're really attracted to it, but actually in reality they're confused by it. So these idioms that aren't accurate. And here we also have sayings. Basically, sayings is just another way of saying idioms or a phrase. Okay, so today let's find out what other sayings are inaccurate.
As blind as a bat. We all know that bats use echolocation to hunt in the darkness. This fact, combined with their erratic flight, has led people to mistakenly believe that bats can see. However, the truth is that all bat species rely on sight to some extent. Moreover, in low light, their vision is often superior to ours.
"第二部分看到名词 species 也可以发作 species， 它的意思是动植物的物种。例如 There are many different species of bear， 有许多不同种类的熊。又或者说 The doctor found many new plant species living inside the cave. 那名博士发现许多新的植物物种生长在那个洞穴里。接着是片语 to some extent， 它的意思是在某种程度上或是部分的。比方说 According to this article, we are to some extent all responsible for climate change. 根据这篇文章，我们在某种程度上全都要为气候变迁负责。也可以说 To some extent, we all contributed to the success of the project. 在某种程度上，我们都造就了此企划的成功。
All right, here we are with the second part of our article, and we have our first idiom here, our first animal-based idiom that seems to make sense to me. It's an idiom I've certainly heard a lot, but apparently that's all wrong. So let's find out which one we're talking about. We're talking about the idiom as blind as a bat. If someone says, I can't find my glasses, and without them I'm as blind as a bat, that basically just means they really need glasses or contact lenses to see things. Their natural eye strength just isn't very good anymore. And so basically they need glasses or they need something to help them see. Without the glasses, they can't see, just like a bat can't see, right? Because we all know that bats are blind. They can't see very well, right?
No, that's not right.
It's a false premise.
It is. We all know that bats use echolocation to hunt in the darkness.
Right, because their eyes don't work.
Kind of. They just have a different type of method of seeing things. And this right here is basically echolocation. So echolocation is finding something based on how the sound bounces off of something else. It's a little confusing, but basically lots of animals have this ability. I believe bats and dolphins also.
Do, yeah.
So what they do is...
Whales.
Yeah, and some types of whales. And basically what they do is they are trying to make sound go off of other things so they can feel the vibration or how the vibration changes in order to see where they are or to see where things are.
That's right. It's also sonar in those submarine movies where they're going bing,
right.
bing, bing, sending out that signal and it bounces off other things underwater. They can hear things. I think I've even heard that if you see a blind person and their cane is tapping on the ground, they can often use the tap, tap, tap of their cane, and they can hear if it's near a wall, if it's near something that might block their way, that kind of thing. Well, this fact that bats use echolocation to see or hunt in the dark, this fact combined with their erratic flight has led people to mistakenly believe that bats can't see. Because, you know, we see what we see, right? We see bats hunting at night. Their eyes aren't very big, so they probably can't see things. They're flying around in this erratic way because bats don't normally fly like in a straight line as most birds do. They kind of twist and turn through the air. Their flight path looks more like a butterfly or a moth or something. It's very erratic. Something that's erratic just changes all the time. It doesn't sort of settle into an established normal pattern. If you're walking along in a straight line, then you're not walking in an erratic fashion. If you're walking, stopping, turning left, turning right, going back, going forward, speeding up, slowing down, this is all very erratic. This is changing a lot with no seeming pattern. It's just very random and chaotic and that kind of thing. And that is a good way to describe how bats fly. So this made people believe mistakenly or wrongly that bats can't see. But the truth is their eyes are perfectly fine.
Okay. So because of echolocation and their erratic flying, people think they're blind. However, the truth is that all bat species rely on sight to some extent.
Interesting.
So they still use their eyes. They're not totally blind. Okay, so a species is basically a set of animals or plants in which the members of this group, they have similar characteristics to each other. So they might look like the same type of animal, but they might have different qualities. For example, we know that the canine species or dogs, we know that there are so many different types of dogs, but they all belong to the same species.
That's true.
They just have different characteristics. Some are bigger, some have more waterproof coat, and some run fast, some are slow. Okay, so species are members that have similar characteristics to each other.
That's right.
So it doesn't matter what kind of bat they are, they still rely on their sight.
Very, very interesting. Moreover, it says, or furthermore, we could add, in low light, their vision is often superior to ours.
Wow.
So just like cats, when the sun is going down in the early hours of the evening, when there's still a bit of light, but not much, we might struggle to see things that are a little bit far away. But bats, on the other hand, even without echolocation, they can see things in a way that's better, with an ability that is better than ours or superior to ours. So that is very, very interesting. I did not know all of that about bats, and it definitely proves that the idiom "as blind as a bat," while it might be a useful idiom and it sort of expresses an idea very well, it is actually scientifically quite inaccurate. All right, let's go to the third part of our article and find out about our second animal idiom that's not quite right. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. This saying refers to the idea that people become less willing or able to learn as they age. And while it's true that humans find it harder to acquire new skills as they get older, it's not impossible. Similarly, dogs can also be lifelong learners. In fact, calmer, older dogs are sometimes easier to teach than energetic puppies.
第三部分介绍动词 acquire， 指的是学到、获得或是取得。举例来说 ，Audrey acquired an antique vase at an auction。Audrey 在一场拍卖会上获得一个古董花瓶。又或者说 ，The team hopes to acquire some new players for the upcoming season。该球队希望能为接下来的球季获得一些新球员。最后介绍形容词 lifelong， 表示终生的或是一辈子的。举例来说 ，Benson had a lifelong passion for playing the piano。Benson 一生都热衷于弹钢琴。或是 Danny and Ben met as children and became lifelong friends。Danny 和 Ben 从小就认识，并成为一辈子的朋友。
And we are back. So here we have another idiom. This is another one you've probably heard. I know that this one isn't true because I saw them prove it on a Discovery Channel show years ago. The idiom is, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. The idea here being that, oh, I'm an old guy, and this might be true for me. Don't show me that TikTok. I don't want to know how to make a TikTok video. I'm an old dog, and you can't teach an old dog new tricks. The idea here being that, I guess, as dogs and people, we often use this more for people than for dogs, but as they age, their ability to learn new things gets worse and worse. And I think maybe at a very advanced age, a very old age, that might be true. But I find it hard to believe that an old dog or an old person can't learn things, and in fact, I know that that's not true.
And while it's true that humans find it harder to acquire new skills as they get older, it's not impossible. So, like you said, Mike, it's not totally impossible for someone older to learn something new, learn a new skill, or acquire a new skill.
Right. You might have to practice a little bit more to remember it all, but I think it's perfectly possible.
So it's still possible to acquire, or basically to learn or develop a skill, a habit, or some sort of quality that you want. So you're still able to do that even when you get older. Maybe it just takes longer, or you need to practice more.
Very, very true. Similarly, we read dogs can also be lifelong learners. So even if you have an older dog of 10 years or older, dogs can also learn their whole lives long, all through their lives. So lifelong, this adjective just means through the whole time of your life, okay? If it's something that you've loved doing or has been part of your life forever, as long as you can remember, you might say, I've been a lifelong tennis player. My mom was a tennis coach. coach. I learned when I was 5 years old, and here I am 82 years old, and I'm still playing tennis. I'm a lifelong tennis player. It's part of my character. It's part of who I am. So you can be a lifelong learner. A lot of people know that, of course, we learn when we're young at school, but later on, people often learn things in their hobbies. I know people who are in their 50s or 60s, they decided, I'm going to learn Japanese all of a sudden for some reason. So that's absolutely true. And in fact, as we reach the end of the article and the end of this point, another interesting little fact here. In fact, calmer, older dogs are sometimes easier to teach than energetic puppies.
That actually makes sense.
It does make sense when you think about it. Yeah. Older dogs are often calmer. They're a little tired too, but they might be easier to teach than a puppy that might be young. It might have a very good brain that's all fresh and full of energy, but that's kind of the problem. It's fresh and full of energy. So the young puppy might lose its attention. It might get its attention distracted. It might not be able to focus. It might be running around, chewing on your shoes and chasing its tail while you're trying to teach it to sit and roll over and shake paws or something like that. But an older dog might sit there and patiently listen to you as you train it, and it might be happy for that little snack that you give it when it is successful. So there you go. Don't give up on the old dog of any species because they still are very capable of learning and performing new tricks.
Okay, let's listen to our Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文一开始写到 English has numerous interesting idioms related to animals. 英文有许多与动物有关的有趣惯用语。那么句子里面的 related 前方省略了 which are 或者是 that are。那么 related 它可以用来形容亲戚关系的或者是有亲缘关系的相关的有关的。我们就可以用 A be related to B来表达 A 和 B 有亲属关系 A 和 B 有关联。例如 The two species are distantly related to each other. 这两个物种有远缘关系，彼此之间的亲缘关系是比较远的。好，那顺便补充一下，动词 relate 常常搭配 to， 那还可以表达出其他的意思哦。像第一个，我们可以用 relate to 名词来表达能够理解什么，对什么感同身受。那动词 relate 在这边是指理解，我们可以用 relate to somebody or something 去表达能够认同某人或某事物，跟某人事物产生共鸣。举例来说 I can relate to her feelings. 我可以理解她的感受，我能感同身受。好，那么第二个 relate 当动词还有叙述或者是讲的意思，相当于 tell， 不过它是比较正式的用字。relate something to somebody 可以表达向某人叙述某事。举例来说 Richard related the whole story to the police.Richard 向警方叙述了整件事情的来龙去脉。好，那么课文第三部分介绍了惯用语 You can't teach an old dog new tricks. 它指的是随着年纪增长，人们会变得较不愿意或较无法学习。那文中是用 refer to 来表达指的是什么什么。那我们这边就顺便来整理一下 refer to 的几个用法。第一个呢，就是课文用法 refer to 可以表达指的是什么与什么什么有关，像 What do the numbers refer to？ 这些数字指的是什么呢？好，第二个我们可以用到 refer to something 来表达查阅、参考，像是参考什么资料等等。例如 Please refer to our website for more information。 想知道更多资讯，请上我们的网站查阅。第三个可以用到 refer to somebody or something 去表达提及、谈到，这尤其是指那种简短的谈到提起，像 They agreed not to refer to the matter again， 他们一致同意不再提起那件事。那么第四个呢，我们可以用到 refer to A as B 来表达将 A 称为 B， 只称 A 为 B。那被动用法是 A be referred to as B， 表达 A 被称为 B。 举例来说 New York City is often referred to as the Big Apple。 纽约市常被称为大苹果。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Inaccurate. We got lost on the way to the party because the invitation provided inaccurate directions. Idiom. The phrase kick the bucket is an idiom meaning to die. Communication. Effective communication promotes strong relationships between individuals. Premise. The premise of Professor Farnsworth's argument was that increased education is linked to better health. Species. One can find a wide variety of plant and animal species in the forests outside the town. Acquire. By the time she completed the math homework, Clara had acquired a good understanding of division. Lifelong. Carl deeply appreciates the lifelong friendships he formed during his time in college.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I am Kiki.
See you next time.